Hello, welcome back to Katie Brings a Book. It's been an interesting week and a half with a virus that just like decimated just it was rough. But I wanted to do a video kind of in honor of the current book I'm reading, The Librarian Spy by Madeline Martin. Such a good book. It's set in France and in Lisbon, Portugal. It's World War II historical fiction. And I know World War II gets this rap as like, well, that's all historical fictions are about. I don't read a ton of World War II historical fiction. I really don't. But this one just spoke to me. It's so good. And I I just can't put it down. And I love historical fiction. And I realized I haven't done a ton of books, a ton of like longer videos about historical fiction. I did one for Women's History Month about great women, books about women, and it was really long. And so I wanted to do a shorter one. We'll see, hopefully, about some really good books that I have on my shelf. And for me to keep a book on my shelf, it means that I've really, really enjoyed it. And some books that I hope that are like on my shelf to read that I'm hoping are really good ones. But so this is going to be historical fiction books that I've really enjoyed and that I hope to read. Um, no real theme other than their historical fiction. I am a little disappointed in that of the books that I currently have on my shelf, I don't have a lot of my diverse authors because they're loaned out from the library, um, currently being borrowed by people because they're just popular for me to like be like, you have to read this book. No, no, you really have to. Or like I got them from the library for some reason, or for some reason like that. So I didn't have them to just grab off my shelf. I do have some of my diverse authors to pull off my shelf for the ones I want to read, which I'm excited about showing you. So, without further ado, these are ones off my shelf. The first set are ones off my shelf that I have read and I love, and there's quite a few, so I'm going to go through them a little bit quickly, but they are all books that I have really enjoyed. We are going to start off with Alison Weir, with The Last White Rose. Now, some of these I did feature in my Women's History Month books, but I am going to also feature them here. And Alison Weir is what they kind of call the new Philippa Gregory. Philippa Gregory was for the generation like before me. I actually enjoy Philippa Gregory. A lot of people say she's not well researched. I enjoy her just from the storytelling aspect. I will still read a good Philippa Gregory. She's like kind of like a comfort read for me. Some of her books. The Last White Rose is about Elizabeth of York, the oldest daughter. So a lot of people love like the Six Wives of Henry VIII. Love the musical. I actually prefer the War of the Roses as more of like my British history Tudor um, deep dive hyper focus. I find that more intriguing, more dramatic, more interesting than the Six Wives of Henry VIII. So this is a good kind of if you want to start to see some of the intrigue from the War of the Roses. I would start with the Last White Rose by Alison Weir, and then branch out into like you can go either direction because she's kind of more towards the middle of the War of the Roses and go from there. War of the Roses is super dramatic. You want serious intrigue. Um, I mean, like if you like intrigue shows, War of the Roses will give that to you. Um, Drama, killing, love interest, all kinds of things, romance. It's all in the War of the Roses, or the Cousins' War, as they called it. Elizabeth is saved. She's the oldest daughter of a king. She's adored by her family. Her two younger brothers go missing. They may or we still not sure if they're murdered to this day. We think they might be. She's betrothed off to a bunch of different people. Her parents were a romance love story. It's just it's a fascinating story. Um, and if you want kind of a different perspective, read both the Alison Weir version and the Philippa Gregory version because they have different versions of the same story. As I tell my students, the facts of history don't change, but the perspective and the bias does. So if you want two different, very different perspectives of the same story. I actually enjoy both sides, the Philippa Gregory and the Alison Weir versions. The Last White Rose. Okay, that got a little wordy. Now we're going to move on. My Dear Hamilton. Love the Hamilton musical. Know it all by heart. But My Dear Hamilton does a fantastic job of giving another alternate perspective. Same kind of thing as what I just talked about. The facts of history don't change, but the perspectives do. And if you are a Hamilton lover, you should still read this book. Stephanie Dray and Laura Camoy came out with a book. I pre-ordered it. It's coming in this week. About Abigail Adams, same time period. And John Adams and Hamilton were sort of frenemies at odds part of the time. And I'm really looking forward to the Abigail Adams book that they wrote together. Um, so also had to figure out My Dear Hamilton about Eliza Hamilton, who is like one of my heroes in history that's unsung. Highly suggest My Dear Hamilton for all my Hamilton fans out there. Kate Quinn, if you know me, you know number one author. I love all her books. I love all her books. Love all her books. I'm looking on my shelf because I one of my TBR books is to read her original Rome series. So she originally wrote the Rome series and the Borgia series, and this is one of my TBR, her Rome series, Mistress of Rome. But the Briar Club is so good. It's so good. It's like a murder mystery, but also it's about the Cold War, which we don't talk a lot about. The 1950s. It's just so good. It's just so good. It's got like LGBTQ history. It's got some African American history. It's got just women, so much women's history. Love the Briar Club. Highly suggested. Also, this cover is divine. That's one thing she does good. Kate Quinn does good covers. So this is one of my TBR. I want to read her entire collection. So I've read all of her modern history now. I will go back to her old history. Okay, this one was a recent book club book for me because I requested it to be a book club book during Women's History Month and it got mixed reviews. I still love it. It is still a 5-star for me. Eleanor of Avignon. It will always be a 5-star for me. And there's another book that is on my TBR for May, which is supposedly similar. So I'm curious to kind of compare the two. But The Stone Witch of Florence is on my May TBR. Look at these edges. So I'm curious to see how they compare because Eleanor of Avignon, so well written, so well researched, but a lot of people say just not enough happens. And so, if you're looking for well researched women's history set during the Black Plague, Eleanor of Avignon, but not a ton of like action packed. So, that can be kind of a downfall of it. Not a tiny bit of romance, not much. One thing with me, I don't need a lot of romance in my historical fiction. I do need it to be well researched, well founded. Eleanor of Avignon gives me that. Um, I love it. I I think it's a beautiful book. So I'm curious to know those of you who read it, if you've read The Stone Witch of Florence, how it adds up too. And I'm really curious to read The Stone Witch of Florence because I love Eleanor of Avignon. And I think it's so next on the list, slightly controversial one. And I say controversial in every sense of the word. So the next one is The Great Believers by Rebecca Makkai. This book, we read it in book club and I loved it. I felt like this was such a beautiful book. It really opened my eyes as somebody who did not live through the AIDS epidemic. I was too young, and I didn't feel it was a time in history that I didn't know about even as a history person, as a teacher, and as somebody who grew up that wasn't something I was taught in history. It really opened my eyes to something that I needed to learn more about. And it's about the AIDS epidemic. And then it really moves into like the 2000, it really moves into 9/11. And I found it a beautiful story. a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Um, the Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. I felt it was, to me, this beautiful story of the AIDS epidemic and of gay men during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and then 9/11 in other countries. And I just found it beautiful. We did it at book club, and I was the minority for this book. A lot of people in my book club felt like it, again, did not have much of a plot, didn't have a lot of action, and there's not like a clear plot, as we say as an English teacher, a plot mountain, like clear like conflict resolution. And there's a lot of characters that are interwoven, and it's controversial because it's about gay men, and there was just a lot going on. And then there's like this side character who gets her own story at the end, and there's just a lot going on in this book. And so it was controversial for a lot of reasons. I found this to be a beautiful book, and the literary side of it and the writing felt very beautiful to me, and it brought a part of history that I felt like needs to be discussed more. And to me, that's historical fiction. Um, I feel like historical fiction needs to make me uncomfortable, just like a lot of books need to make me uncomfortable. Reading should be political. Reading should make me uncomfortable. Reading should help me learn more. And a historical fiction, good historical fiction, makes me want to research more about the time period as well. That's why I love historical fiction. And my love of history, wanting to be a history teacher, came from reading historical fiction as a child. And so for me, this book did all the things I want historical fiction to do. However, I try to be very even handed and tell you, like in my book reviews, okay, maybe this isn't the best book, or maybe while I loved this book, not everybody did. So I want to be honest with this book and say, like, this is not for everybody. But for me, it. For me, this was an experience of a book. It is not a rush through it book. Pick it up, put it down. This was like I read another book while I read it, and I experienced this book, and I felt like it was just a beautiful writing. So I was very thankful I read it. Um, Another book that I always recommend to almost anybody that will listen talking about historical fiction is The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I will recommend Ariel Lawhon. She is, to me, just not like just not discussed enough when we talk about historical fiction. Codename Helen. I'm not sure. I'm Anastasia. I have not read of hers, but Anastasia is not somebody that I'm interested in learning a ton about, so I haven't read that. But I feel like we don't sleep on her. Don't sleep on her as a historical fiction writer. But The Frozen River, I know it was popular a while ago. Such a in Just the way she writes and the way she researches, and this book was so good. Based on a true story about a true woman, and a true murder case, a true midwife. The research she talks about the research at the end of the book. Um, it's just such a beautiful story, and about a time in history. We have this kind of these patent answers we talk about when we talk about the Revolutionary War. We're just like, yeah, that happened, and okay, moving on with our life. And like, okay, well, the Declaration of Independence was written and everybody was happy about it, and then yay, we were done with it in a couple days. No, like there was so much more to it, and I feel like this book does a good job of showing like there was so much more to women in the Revolutionary War, and so much more to what was happening, and so much many more discussions. Also, I love the marriage, the portrayal of their marriage in the story. And I like the husband in the story reminds me so much of my husband. It's part of why I love it. But more than that, like the historical fiction aspect and the way women are portrayed in the story, always going to be one of my favorites. And it brings in like the thriller aspect that I love with the women's historical fiction. Always will suggest this. Now, this last one um, is an author. I just did a blurb about her latest book, It Girl, which was probably my top book of April. But this last one, Finding Margaret Fuller, not my favorite book of hers. However, if you are a literary person, if you love to talk about literary, if you love Little Women and you like talking about Ralph Waldo Emerson and Walden, you need to read this book, Finding Margaret Fuller, because it has all of these literary people that really lived. And then there's Margaret Fuller, who impacted all of these people, and we never discuss her and we never talk about her. I didn't know this woman existed until I read this book. It is not like, wasn't my favorite book of all time, but what I learned from it was fascinating. And so sometimes that happens with historical fiction. What I've learned from it got me more than the actual book. Now, my favorite Alison Pataki book, not my favorite historical fiction book, but I learned so much. And I learned so much about these authors that we just bandy about in literary terms. Oh, I've read Walden and, by Thoreau, and I've read Ralph Waldo Emerson, who I do read their poetry, and Louisa May Alcott's father, Bronson, who was an interesting person, who I discuss in my history classes with my students, and transcendentalism, and these people we talk about in history, and when we're talking about poetry and all that. Who were they as people? And then this woman who, talks about them, Edgar Allan Poe, all of these people kind of, she does a really good job of saying these were all real people. And this is how this woman intersects in all of their lives. So, for that, if you are a person who really likes talking about classic literature and poetry and all these people, I highly suggest this book. Unfortunately, that is what I have just readily available um, in my like historical fiction little world right now. I have others kind of in my classroom and loaned out. I had to sit back and get a little comfy because I have a few, and I'm going to go through them kind of quickly because this video is already almost 20 minutes long, and that's not including the ones. Okay, so the ones I want to read, and I'm just pulling a sampling. I have a lot that I want to read just off of these shelves, not even like my online Goodreads and Storygraph list. This is just what's on my shelf. I have a lot. Smile face. So I love historical fiction. And I mentioned earlier, but historical fiction has been my love. Even before thrillers were my love, historical fiction was my love. From American Girl doll books, um, I mean, like my mom has always encouraged my love of historical fiction, um, and I would just devour historical fiction books. So I love historical fiction books. I always suggest them. I think that they have so many other genres in them that they bring out, and they teach so much, and they really help us to see society so well and to learn so much from them. So I gather just kind of a sampling of some of the ones I'm excited to read. And I'm excited. Now, the thing for me with historical fiction is it can include horror, it can include thriller, it can include romance, though I don't tend to do a lot of romance in my historical fiction, not my style. So you're not going to get that really from me, but I do have some like horror historical fiction. I do have straight, just intense, just straight historical fiction. Um, and so I'm excited. There is like a lot on there's a lot of historical fiction that's on my electronic TBR because I get a lot from the library. I'm a very much a library person, so, but these are just ones that I've just happened to plug off my shelf today just to show you. So let's get started. The first one is from this is one that I'm going to be reading this month. It's on my May TBR, and this is The First Witch of Boston. And I have been wanting to read this for so long, and it just was taking so long for my library. I went ahead and I just bought it. I just had to have it, and I'm really excited to read it. I am fascinated by anything to do with I don't want to say witch culture, but anything to do with ostracized women that have then been called witches or out of the community or ostracized because of it. And so we think of so much of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in Salem, but we don't think of the fact that there was this witch concept all throughout the Massachusetts Bay Colony. 1646. I am so excited to read this book. So excited to read this book. So this is one of my May TBRs. This is like top of my May TBR list because it's on one of my like assigned books that my one of my prompts that I have to read. So this is going to be in the next like week or two right now because I'm reading The Librarian Spy. But I'm excited to read the First Witch of Boston. It's been on my TBR for a while, and it's going to be in May. The next one is Chanel Clayton's The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes. Does a lot of Cuban history, a lot of Cuban American history, and this has a triple timeline: London 2024, Havana 1966, and Boston 1900. I've enjoyed her Perez family series. I've tried to start this book once, and it just hasn't been the right timing. It's not a very thick book, but it's kind of just been like not the right timing to read it. But I am really looking forward to it. I enjoy her books. They're pretty easy reads, and it's history that we don't learn a lot about that I'm really trying to. I had some Hispanic students this year um, really challenge me to include more Hispanic American history in my American history class this year. So this summer, I'm going to be doing quite a bit of, going to try to do some more Hispanic American history research and historical fiction reading. So this is going to be one probably this summer that I'm going to be reading. Next is one I am excited about. Uh, I've heard about it a couple different places and here on BookTube, and so I'm excited. Lone Women by Victor Laval. It's set in 1915, and she is a lone woman homesteader, but it's a horror. She's got this box that she carries with her, and nobody can open it. It's a secret. And again, not very thick. Gonna knock it out pretty quickly. Um, but I'm really excited for it. And evidently, Victor Laval has some other books that he's written that I want to read as well. But this one I'm a, like women's history. Um, I've just got to read it. And so I'm excited to read this one as well. Ooh, banged it. Okay, this one, I tried it as an audiobook and I just, the narrator, sometimes audiobooks, I am not an audiobook person. Not an audiobook person, but I tried this one. The Quiet Librarian about the Serbian Bosnian conflict, but it's also a thriller. Love a good historical fiction mystery slash thriller. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. The Serbian Bosnian conflict, it's so modern history that it's not taught much, but it's like really, I was young when it happened, so I don't know much about it. So I'm really curious to read this book because I think it's going to be very interesting. The story was good. I couldn't just, sometimes narrators just don't click for me, especially because I am not an audiobook person. I have to have the right narrator for me to even attempt an audiobook, and it just wasn't clicking. Nothing wrong with the narrator, it just wasn't for me. So I got the book. I'm really looking forward to learning more about this conflict through this book and then doing the research. That tends to be how I do, especially when I don't know something. I get interested in it through a historical fiction book and then I do the research into it myself later. It just gets my mind more interested in it. So The Quiet Librarian, I know this was very popular for a little bit. So if you've read this, I would really like to hear what your thoughts are on it. Um, it sounded really good. And I love librarian stories. So it sounds fantastic. This is a new book by an auto-buy author, and I just got it recently on Independent Bookstore Day. Marie Benedict. Marie Benedict has my heart. One day I want to meet her. That's like a bucket list item for me. Marie Benedict, if anybody knows her, she's just like one of my favorite authors. Daughter of Egypt. Basically, if Marie Benedict writes it, I don't care if it's a grocery list, I will read it. And she has her book with Victoria Christopher Murray coming out, Pair of Aces. It's already pre-requested at the library by me, and might end up buying that. But if Marie Benedict writes it, again, I will read it. I plan to read this just because she wrote it. It has to do with Egypt. I'm not a big Egypt person, never have been, but I will read this book. That's just kind of what it comes down to. Go read Marie Benedict. My favorite of her books is with Victoria Christopher Murray, and it is for the First Ladies. And I always teach about Eleanor Roosevelt, and Mary Bethune Cookman. Um, excuse me, Mary Bethune. Um, because of Bethune Cookman College, it's set in here, Florida. I teach about Eleanor Roosevelt and Mary McLeod Bethune, saying her name wrong, um, every year, like ad nauseum when I teach that era. Um, and that is my favorite book by them. Skylark. I cannot wait to read this book, and it's just beautiful. Look at this cover. Like, if this is just one of those covers that you want to just judge by the cover. Other than that, I know it's set in France, 1664 and 1939. I don't know other besides the fact that it's beautiful, and everybody says it's the most beautiful and amazing book, and I can't wait to read it. Um, I think it came up in my March TBR, but I didn't end up getting to read it. It just fell off the wayside in March. But I plan to read it. 16. It has to do. Oh, that's right. It has to do with an insane asylum and with World War II, which I'm fascinated by both of those. So this is like a top of the line plan to read. The next book is The Girls of Good Fortune. It kept calling to me from at Barnes and Noble. I kept seeing it. Also, look at these edges; they are so pretty. And it's set in Oregon, 1888. Set in notorious Shanghai tunnels, and it looks like it's about human trafficking of Chinese American girls. And she is a girl awakens in an underground cell, drugged and disguised. And the tagline is, "She came from a lineage known for good fortune by those who don't know the whole story." It's called The Girls of Good Fortune. I have been wanting to read this for a while. It sounds really good. It's got good reviews. And it's also got Janie Chang, who was one of the co-authors with Kate Quinn of The Phoenix Crown, who I have a book for AAPI Heritage Month to read as well. Wrote one of the blurbs for it, so I'm excited about reading this one as well, The Girls of Good Fortune. The next one is The Last Carolina Girl by Megan Church. And I have had my eye on this book for like 2 years. I need to just go ahead and read it. When I've had it this long, right? Like, I just need to go ahead and read it. I believe it's set in 1935, and it's about the state eugenics board. I just read another book about the state eugenics board a few months ago. And y'all, when people tell me America has never done eugenics, that was a Hitler thing, I get so frustrated because I said, no, we did it first. We did eugenics. We did it. I mean, we did it during slavery. We did it after that. We have several amazing books about eugenics. This is one that I haven't read yet. I've been looking forward to reading it, and it's about a girl who it has to do with the eugenics of this girl, the last Carolina girl. And it has to do with class system as well. I'm really looking forward to reading it, but it's supposed to be very sad. So we'll see how this goes. And my last book, definitely not least, I'm so excited to read this book, is The Mayor of Maxwell Street. It's a chunky book, but I'm so excited. Mayor of Maxwell Street is the year is 1921. I've read the blurb of this book. I'm still not exactly sure what it's about because I've heard different people like have read it. I don't think a lot of people have read this book from what I understand, but it sounds very good. It has to do with um, African American society in the 1920s and Jim Crow in Chicago, and that's all I've figured out so far. But it sounds really good. I'm just not exactly sure. I think it. Anyway, I'm just gonna read the book and tell you what it's about later, because I've heard like several different people review this book, and everybody's reviewed it differently, which may mean it's really good because there's a lot to it, or maybe nobody's quite sure what it's about. But I think it means there's a lot to this book. I just know that everybody. Excuse my dog in the background. He's just shaking it off. So far, everybody's reviewed it as a great book. So I think it's just that there's a lot to this book, and it's a great book, and it's very like multifaceted. So I'm very much looking forward to this book. So that is my historical fiction books. I'm really excited about my TBRs. Those are the books that I just happen to have on my shelf. If you've read any of these books that are on my TBR, tell me what you thought of them. Which one should I read first? I definitely have um, the first Witch of Boston on my May TBR. Are there any that I need to put on my May TBR? Like that's my next one for sure. I have quite a few really good ones on my May TBR right now, but I am definitely willing to move some up because I'm just like I'm excited. And May, like my May is my birthday month, so I'm kind of just doing what I want. That's just how life goes. So, what do you think? Which ones need to be moved up, if any? And have you read the ones that I'm not quite sure about, especially this Mayor of Maxwell Street? What did you think? Can you give me some clues as to what it's about? This one in Shelterwood. Help the girl out. Anyway, remember, this is Katie, and remember to always bring a book.